Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Bleav in Lions podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Thompson, and pleased to be joined today by former Ohio State Buckeye lineman and current Bleav in Buckeyes co-host, Bryant Browning. Bryant, thank you for taking time to join us here today on Bleav in Lions. We're going to talk about the Lions and the Buckeyes as well. I don't know if you should mention Michigan and Ohio State in the same sentence. You and I don't have to scrap about this now. No beef between us, but that rivalry certainly is legendary. And with the 28th overall pick in the first round, the Lions do select an Ohio State Buckeye in Tyleik Williams for their defensive line. Tell me about this kid. Tell me what you know about him, what about his mental makeup that is going to appeal to Lions fans, and what they got with that 28th pick.
I mean, I think they got a guy that could really do it all, right? I mean, obviously, this is the National Football League, right? And obviously, it's all about the quarterback, scoring point, things of that nature. But when it's time to really play some good ball and really want to be a championship team, it starts up front, offensive line, defensive line. And Tyleik is a guy that brings a lot to the table with his versatility, with his size, with his ability to kind of play up to the level of his competition, wherever that may be. And I just think you guys got a guy that's that definitely could do it all. And I think you guys really improved as a team by taking Tyleik in the first round.
So pit yourself on the O-line against this guy on the D-line and the problems that he's going to bring, how you defend him, what kind of havoc he wreaks, and what makes it so tough to defend against a guy like that.
I think he's really a special player. I'm a former offensive lineman, right? So as a former offensive lineman, you get confident against guys, you get yourself riled up, like, all right, I'll be able to execute and do X, Y, Z against him. But certain guys on the defensive line, you almost got to feel like, well, you just got to kind of hope he has an off day for you to kind of be successful. And Tyleik definitely has that ability where it's definitely he can just do it all, right? He just has the size. So you're not about to just kind of, come off the line and blow him off the ball, whether it's a single block or a double team. In a pass rush, you're not just going to, take an offset and, kind of get him with a half a hand. No, you may need 2 to 4 hands going in his direction to kind of stop him in the interior of the line there. So, like I said, he's just a versatile guy. For a guy his size, he definitely has speed, athletic ability, and quickness that he all brings to the table. And we're playing for Coach Johnson here at Ohio State. He has tremendous hands, like all our defensive linemen has, going from that college level to the pro level. So he's just a guy you just kind of have to, bring your best day if you want to have a success against him, for sure.
You talk about him going from college to the pros. Is this guy a guy you see as a day one starter, or how do you see this developmental curve working for him at the next step?
I feel like he could do it all, right? And so I'm be honest, I don't know exactly what you guys are bringing back on the defensive line for the Lions going into this 25 season, but I know he's a guy that's definitely going to, uplift the room, right? So if you need him in that starter position, he could go in there and do that. He could play the 3 technique. With his size, he could kind of slide down and play that nose position. Or that 1 technique position for you guys as well. And then he comes from a background where you kind of have to rotate guys in, right? He comes from Ohio State. There's a lot of good guys on the defensive line. So if you don't actually start the game, but he's going to kind of get his rep, he definitely still would take him serious. He's a team first guy coming back to Ohio State to, play and win a national championship where he could have left a year early to, to go to the pros. Came back for another year because he, the team matters to him. And I know that's essentially what you guys are building up there in Detroit.
You touched on something I wanted to get to. I was going to get to it a little bit later, but you brought it up now, so let's go there. So Tyleik Williams, national champion. Tate Ratledge from Georgia, another guard, national champion that they took in the second round. Then you go down to the 7th round. They drafted Dan Jackson, a safety from Georgia, national champion. And then in the 7th round also, pick 244, Dominic Lovett, a wide receiver from Georgia, national champion. You got 4 national champions taken in this year's draft. Obviously, they come equipped knowing what it takes to win, but they probably also have some great leadership qualities, and they probably also have a hunger in them, and they're not going to suffer losing. Guys who win want to win and keep on winning. We know this about athletes in sports. I'm just wondering from the outside looking in, when a guy comes with that kind of pedigree, or these guys come with a winning pedigree under their belts, what impact that has on guys on the team. Does it matter at all to guys on the team? Does it have an impact in those rooms and in those huddles? What's your take on having 4 national champions come in one draft to your team?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, Trevor, because obviously we're not NFL GMs, right? But, you kind of see it all the time that, the GMs, they draft guys and sometimes go from schools that, you're not really familiar with, or they're not, playing D1 ball. And I'm not saying these guys are bad players by no means. But in my opinion, like if you're a guy that once again play at a high level every week in the college level, you're expected to win. You're going out there to win. You're trying to be a national champion, a conference champion, wherever that may be for your team. To me, it matters a little bit more, right? You don't ever really get to a point where you're just playing football casually, right? You're not just kind of going through the motions or just getting to practice. You're going to go out there in the game and do something that's best for you so you can showcase your talent and try to make a play so you could get up and do your dance on national TV, right? you always have the team first, and with it in the bigger picture, we need to win this game for position in the playoff. Why do position in the playoffs matter? So we can have a better, home field advantage. So we can have a better opportunity to get into the big one and being a champion. You just kind of already have that mindset, as part of your game. I always say in football, like, you work so hard for this so small opportunities, right? You work all year round and you get this short window where you actually have an opportunity to play games. You have to maximize it. And to me, maximizing it is winning games, being a champion, doing things of that nature. So obviously when you have guys like that or that pedigree on your roster, once again, like you say, they done it, right? They know what it takes to be a champion and all the things you have to come over. Ohio State, Georgia, two big programs. Every year you're expected to compete to be a national champion. Obviously every year you don't get it done, but that's your mindset, right? Everything you're doing is to be a champion. It's to be a champion. You understand that you have an opportunity to do that. So obviously the Lions has been improving every year under Dan Campbell, and I know that's something that they are itching at, right? They're getting closer and closer. Last year, obviously you guys got bit with the injury bug, which affects the team, right? You win with people, right? And so, that definitely affects the team. But I think you guys have a good thing going. So you bring in more guys that understand that, and you want to just keep it going until you one day, check that box of getting that championship.
Man, you are reading my mind all over the place right now, because the next thing I wanted to get to was the injuries that the Lions suffered last year. It was incredible. I'd never seen that many injuries on one team in my life, especially on the defensive side of the football. But every single guy that came back in played with the same level, the same mentality, the same ferociousness, the same hunger. There wasn't a lot of drop-off, so they kept winning games. They ended up 15-2 despite all those injuries. From the mentality side of it, what's the makeup of Tyleik? What's he bring to the table with his mental attitude, with his habits week in and week out that are going to put him in the same category as everybody we've seen come through this Lions program who, like I said, there's very little drop-off because they're ready. They all have the same sort of attitude toward the game.
Yeah, right. And first of all, that starts with what? Leadership, right? Coach Campbell has his team. Got to understand that, like, hey, when your number is called, you go out there and perform.
Yeah, and Brad acquires these guys. Like, there's something they see in guys that have a commonality. Brad brings the same sort of guys in. Dan coaches them up the same way, but continue on.
Yeah, no. And like I say, that culture matters, right? Like, you look at certain teams in the NFL, right? I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and sad to say, like, 9 times out of 10, we're most likely not having the best of seasons, right? And when I played football, I was on practice squad. I bounced around 7 different teams, and I could see the difference between playing for the Carolina Panthers and playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And why every year that this team could be competitive, it's the culture, right? They understand that they do have a great opportunity to win. Once they get into the playoffs, they have an opportunity to be a Super champion. You see it in the banners. You see it in the people that's around the program. Same thing when you're coming from Ohio State. You see it in the Raptors, the national championship teams, the conference championship teams. So now you believe that in yourself, right? And so I believe Tyleik has obviously been under the tutelages of that for his 4 years on the college level, and he's going to bring that to pro ball as well. Yes, we play competitive ball. We play to be to be champions, and that's what the culture is currently at the Lions, right? Change a big shift in things from you guys, historically, to now that, hey, we are that team in this conference. We are that team out of the NFC that's going to make some noise and be competitive and put ourselves in the right position to get the job done.
So after the draft, the first thing I do is go and look at everybody's film. I don't try to guess who people are going to take. I'm not a GM. I don't know what I don't know. A lot of people, guess and speculate. Oh, they're going to do this. They need to do this. But you don't know what you don't know. So you go back and you look at the film, and I've watched this kid. He looks strong. He looks fast. He looks like he gets after it every play. He's got a motor. But that's only on film. You watch this guy in and out every week, and the intricacies of what Ohio State wants to do and how he fits their program and that sort of thing. So just take us inside of what you see every week that we can't glean just from watching the highlights of this kid and what he's going to bring to the table on a weekly basis for Lions fans.
Yeah, I think he's a soundboard leader, and he's one of those guys that let his performance kind of, dictate, his leadership skills. On that defensive line, he played with some big names, right? He had JT, who was a 5-star off the West Coast, who was really highly recruited. And, I remember when he committed, it was a big deal around Columbus. Oh, we got this DN coming in JT. And then we got Jack Sawyer, who's a hometown kid, right? He's a hometown kid, another big name, really athletic coming into Ohio State. And then these two guys that he's been playing with essentially for 4 years. These guys are on the same line of each other. And these guys are more of the household names. And then Tyleik on the other end kind of worked himself up. All right, I think he played a lot of ball here at Ohio State starting his freshman year. But over the 4 years, he just kept improving. He kept getting better. And then by the end of it, we was like, well, maybe Tyleik is the best guy on this defensive line. And I think, obviously the draft kind of, dictate that too, his talent and what he brought to the table. But he didn't start off there. Tyler, he was obviously a 4-star. He's not one a bad player by no means, but he just wasn't that big name. But he kept working, and he kind of let that be his leadership skill. Like, I don't have to have the biggest name. No one has to know what I'm, all my accolades and things of that nature. But when you watch the film, you see me doing all these things. You see me winning consistently. You see me bringing it play after play after play after play. And that's what matters, the most when it comes to, for a guy like that essentially, I don't need all of this, but I show it, I play it, and we win games, for some of the work that I'm doing here on the interior of this defensive line.
Again, you and I aren't NFL head coaches. You and I aren't NFL GMs or owners or anything like that. But when it comes to the draft, let's go back to this for a second. We talked about these guys winning national championships. But when you come from a school like Ohio State in the Big Ten, and you come from a school like Georgia or LSU in the SEC, and you're playing against the best competition play after play, week after week, how does that elevate your draft status and how much more you're prepared for the league when you get there, when every week, regardless of whether you're a captain or how many reps you get, but you're around that kind of culture? How does that impact your draft status and what coaches, GMs, and these guys look for in players, and how does that impact your team?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they understand the level of competition, right? And I think that's a big thing that you always kind of have to do. I'm sure you know yourself that that the jump from high school to college is a big jump. It's like, this is a big culture shock. All of a sudden, everybody's good. But then the jump from college to the pros, it's not that big of a jump, right? I mean, certainly you have some guys that are certainly special and everything they do is like, well, you just don't see these guys often. But then there's a lot of guys that's kind of like, I could compare this guy to somebody I practice with on a day-to-day basis, or maybe someone that's I played against that, you saw across the Big Ten. So, you just, once again, you understand that competition, you understand that level of intensity you have to bring day after day if you want to be successful. You don't get to just kind of roll your head out there and go out and dominate. Like, no, you have to bring it. You have to have your technique sharp. You have to, be ready to go. If you're nicked up, you got to know how to get yourself patched up, because if you go out there half stepping, it's not going to go right. You understand that already, right? So you don't have to learn it; it's already inbred in you once you kind of playing against that level of competition on a day in and day out basis. So I think that's definitely something that Tyleik has learned. And once again, once you're in those type of programs where all eyes on you. Essentially, it's almost like a pro program, because all eyes on you, and if something happens, you're going to be on the news. You understand you have to bring it and do your part every day across the board, for sure.
Yeah, coming into the draft, a lot of the prognosticators and the experts thought that the Lions would draft an edge in the first round to help out Aiden Hutchinson. But how do you think Tyleik, in his position, is still going to help Aiden and the rest of the D line do their thing?
Yeah, I mean, you can't, once Tyleik kind of gets into a rhythm and he understands exactly, the pass pro and kind of some of that type of techniques that he needs to, I think the run, he kind of got it. If one thing you say he improved, maybe a little bit winning one-on-one when it comes to the pass pro. But once you kind of be able to kind of bring that to the table, I mean, that helps your DN out better than another defensive end, in my opinion, right? So if you guys are both on the side of the ball, you can't just slide two guys out to Hutchinson and leave your center one-on-one with this defensive tackle here in Tyleik. So if he kind of, keeps elevating his game and be that pro I know he could be, I think you put those two on the same side, and now, you're not, it doesn't have to be third down, third and long, where you're kind of looking at a tough situation, pass blocking wise. It could be, second and medium. that these guys are winning off the line of scrimmage and causing havoc for a quarterback. So, in my opinion, I think the best way to help your star defensive end is to put some presence on the inside, some guys that you know could win there, and I think that helps them out more, even more than a guy that's potentially on the edge. That's a little bit, essentially he on the edge, you're on the opposite side of things.
Right. And Glover Quinn was saying too, the more havoc they wreak up front, the more the DBs are licking their chops and getting some picks on as far as the backfield goes as well, rushing QBs and that sort of thing. How's that play out?
Yeah. So that's a DB's dream, right? To get pressure up front, right? So I do my show. I'm about to show Bleav in Buckeye with a cornerback. He's an All-American cornerback, Chinny Check, while he played in the NFL as well. And he talks about it all the time. Like, if my whole technique changed if I know my defensive line is good or bad. If they're good, I could play this certain way. I could be aggressive. I could, do certain things to kind of be a little bit more disruptive when it comes to the passing game. If my D-line is not that good, I got to play a little bit softer. I got to give myself a little bit more cushion because things are going to happen in front of me and things are taking a little bit longer. So I got to be in better position for longer. So it matters a lot. Obviously, everything go hand to hand. It's football, the ultimate team sport. So the better that defensive line is, the better that the DB is going to be, the better your defense is overall when it comes down to it.
You're from Cleveland. You've spoken a little bit about the woes of the Browns over the years, but you're not that far away from the city of Detroit. And you know that we've had our woes in football over the years as well. And the saying around here was always same old Lions. You might have heard it. I probably traveled all the way to Cleveland. But Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, it's not the same old Lions. 15-2 NFC champs. That's not the same old thing around Detroit at all. I'm just wondering, from where you watch in Cleveland and in your eyes, you played at the highest levels, what you've seen that has changed the culture, the attitude, and what the thoughts of the Lions are from somebody outside of Detroit and outside of the program.
Yeah, I think once again, it starts at top, right? So I feel like now I'm gonna compare it to the Browns. The Browns was getting a little better, right? And then it felt like our owner kind of came in, who's not obviously the football mind guy, and he kind of forced a decision at the QB position, and essentially everything kind of came tumbling down from there. But, on your guys' side, like you said, you got Dan Campbell, you got your GM, and you guys are on the same page of how they evaluating guys. And I watched the Hard Knocks, right? I think a couple years ago.
Yeah. I got fired up watching that, man. Right? I think a lot of people did.
A lot of did, though. But you got to learn Dan Campbell, right? He kind of came in, remember his intro, this crazy interview, saying all these crazy things, but you see it in the Hard Knocks. Like, look, this is truly who he is. Mm-hmm. He truly cares about his players. And if you're a coach that could connect to your players, especially on a professional level, as we know sometimes it could get tough to do, you could ask the most out of them. Right. Mm-hmm. And you demand the most out of them because they know that you care. They see your passion for it. So they go out there. And once again, someone, like you were stating before, someone gets nicked up, the next guy come in and give you all he has as well, start playing above his ability because of that before the team. And so it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen every day, especially when it comes to professional sports. When you start talking about grown men coaching other grown men, it's sometimes kind of get tough to do. And some guys never figure it out. They never could make that connection. They're great X and O guys. They can't really make that connection to the players. Dan Campbell is obviously able to check that box, being a former player. And I think it just kind of, once again, sits in this team, sits in this culture that whoever comes to this locker room understand exactly what they're bringing. And you get to success on the field because of it.
Man, and they're only going to be more successful with a guy like Tyleik in the mix, and we're glad that you stopped by to talk to him, talk to us about him. But there's one more thing before I let you go. I know I spent some time in Columbus. I work with the Red Wings as well. We go in there, we play the Blue Jackets, but I haven't had a chance to stop at your restaurant. The Pit Barbecue. How are the ribs, man? What's going on? Tell me about that. How you got involved?
Man, we don't. I'm out of the mix on that, man. Okay. So we don't do that no more. So it was a good run, though. We did it for about 5 years. We've been out of it for a couple of years now. But I would say this, though, Trevor, you missed out, man. It was some
my goodness, I'm going to hit you up for a pretty plate, bro.
It was some good food. But no, we kind of transitioned out of that now. So me and my partner, Chim, we're doing some other things that you kind of hear about here in the future in kind of that NIL space, along with our podcast there. But so we're definitely once that kind of gets a little bit more going, it's a state by state type of thing we're doing. Mm-hmm. But we're going to bring it up north, even though to help out certain schools up north, and not all schools up north, if you know what I mean.
I feel you. But now
we'll get with you on that.
But now you opened up a whole new can of worms because this NIL thing, I don't know what to think about it. When some of these guys are getting the kind of money they are right now and how it might impact how kids approach all of this. Just give me a quick thought on that before I do let you go. I don't want to take up all of your time here, but give me a quick thought on that, where you think it's going and the impact that it might have. I know it's a bigger story than give me a quick thought on it, but I do want to know your thoughts. That's an interesting topic.
So obviously I think most people understand that a change was needed, right? I think, it wasn't very fair that, essentially you go out on a Saturday afternoon and it's literally everybody making money except for the people that literally brought the hundreds of thousands of people together. They're the only ones that are not making zero and everybody else is making something, right? So I think a change definitely had to be had. Obviously it's the Wild Wild West and we understand that right now things are crazy, things seems very weird and skewed, but I think, I think in some time it would kind of get a little bit more normalized and regular and things of that nature. I think everybody knows it's here, so they're trying to kind of put their best mind to it to kind of come up to some conclusions for it. But like I said, overall, I would say it's a good thing. Obviously, some bad things are going to come from it, but I think it's going to do a lot more good for our young athletes to get something compared to, back in the day when you got nothing and essentially you kind of had to, once you kind of get done with school, you starting afresh, anew, where essentially you could have a little something to kind of give yourself some gap and space to learn a little bit and kind of figure out exactly what you want to go with yourself once you're finished with sport.
Well, man, you've been fantastic right here, and I'd love to bring you back and talk a little bit more on that because that is certainly an entire podcast in itself where that's going, where it's been and how it's impacting schools and athletes. So that's something we will definitely do going forward, and we appreciate your time right here, brother. Appreciate you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Trevor. Thanks for having me on.
Bryant Browning, Bleav in Buckeyes podcast, has joined us here today on Bleav in Lions. We certainly appreciate it. We look forward to further conversations, my man.
All right. Talk to you soon.